Hello. Welcome to Nightmare Tuesdays. This, though you wouldn't know it, is take 3. Don't ask. My name is Sai. I am some idiot, and I enjoy reading things. For you. For everyone. And I hope that you enjoy listening. What we've got today is, again, with Nightmare Tuesdays, publications from Nightmare Press. This is something that I just really want to do. I love giving a show towards an independent publisher. We're going to dive straight on into it. Based on the cover art for this one, looks like it's going to be another spooky one, which is appropriate for the end of October. So, let's get going. Stitches and Other Short Stories by J.M. Heluk? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Heluk. Published by Nightmare Press, Shepherdsville, Kentucky. Copyright 2025. Front cover art by J.M. Heluk. Additional art and design by Christy Aldridge. Edited by Jacob Floyd. No portion of this book may be copied or transmitted in any form, electronic or otherwise, without express written consent of the publisher or author. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, locations, events, and incidents are fictitious and or used fictitiously. Any resemblance to any actual people, living or dead, places, events, or incidents is unintentional and purely coincidental. My mind is bent to tell the bodies changed to other forms. Ovid, Metamorphoses. And they're okay in my book. I, the author, J.M. Heluk. Dedicated for Chris and every cat we've ever loved. What we have got, there's a total, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 stories. Now, based on the length of these, I'm probably only going to read the first one. That's my usual take on this. I only want to give a teaser. I don't want to give the entire friggin' thing away. If you enjoy what you hear, make sure to go to Nightmare Press's website. I will have links in the description for both their site, as well as to purchase the book itself, and buy yourself a copy. Show it some love. But we're going to start out with 2 miles as the crow flies. Where do all the birds go, Pa? He had asked me that once. I told him, south. That's where birds go. They all fly south. But just for a while. Just for the winter. My God, that's too long of a time. Oak, Montana, January 1986. Snow had fallen, and by dawn the farm lay blanketed with incalculable dunes of white. Trees bowed under the weight. The entire gate was lost. Since early November, the sky had been a perpetual veil of gray. That morning, it was the color of tarnished nickel. My son and I were shoveling a path from the back porch to the barn when we saw him. Dale, then 10 years old, dropped his shovel and pointed to a man trying to cross the rear of our property. Once the man stumbled, and once he fell and fought to rise. The stranger was reed thin, his face twinkling with ice crystallized on the ridges of his cheeks. We tracked his progress, the both of us shivering in our padded coveralls, our work boots already damp at the toes. Call to him, Pa, Dale urged, taking a single step forward. The man struggled through knee-high drifts. He wore a wide-brim leather hat, a scarf, but no gloves. His body was covered in little more than pants and a rag-torn, ankle-length coat which failed miserably at remaining buttoned. The stranger did not respond when I called out. He continued on his weary way, collapsing to one knee, then rising more times than I could count. I felt sorry for him. Even from this distance, I saw his mouth was purple, slung, crooked, and wrong. yet his face remained a mask of determination. Dale tapped a mitten on my wrist and said, "Wind's kicked up. He must not have heard you. Call to him again." I thought the stranger was working his way towards the main road, so "Let him be," I replied. "He'll find his way sooner or later." Smiling too much, I turned to the task of clearing snow. Dale frowned. To comfort him, I said, "Someone will pick the guy up at the road." Still, Dale insisted. "That's not nice. He can freeze to death, can't he? What if it was me, Pa?" Then my son gave a brief but poignant sermon on the Christian way, of how we should help our fellow man and such. "Have him spend the night," Dale begged. "One night, at least until the storm passes, or—" "Or what?" I asked, loosening my grip on the shovel. "Let him sit round the house till the ice melts off his bones?" I tried for another smile, but the wind made my teeth ache. "Wait, maybe that's not such a bad idea after all," I joked. "He could clean your room." Dale nodded enthusiastically. "Can he have dinner with us too?" "Sure." Rolling my eyes, I bent, ruffling my son's hat until it slipped over the bridge of his nose. Complaining, Dale pushed it back up. The half-hearted smile he wore told me he was just tolerating my antics. "Not a wise move, son," I added. "We don't know the first thing about this person. Let him be." Sighing, Dale abandoned his shovel in the drift, and then, with arms crossed firmly over his chest, said, "Ma would have let him in." His words froze deep inside of me. Ma would have let him in. But there was no sense bringing Sable into it. The woman had a heart of gold, the kind strangers preyed on. That day, more than ever, I felt real fear about my son's too trusting nature. I didn't mind so much that winter was chewing my face raw, or that my bones throbbed, or the tips of my toes had gone so numb when I peeled the socks from them later they'd be blue. I was terrified of Dale's innocence, that he was soft-hearted, too helpful. My pappy used to say that all a soft heart got you was an empty wallet and a slit throat. 29 years in the Oak County Sheriff's Department. Now there was a man who knew the real world. Still, I tried hard to find a Christian explanation as to why we couldn't take the stranger in, one that Dale could understand. But, much like his mother would do, he argued every point I hurled at him, and sometime during our discussion, the traveler vanished. He was there, then gone. We stared across the yard, Dale a bit more eagerly than me. He shaded his eyes from the pelting ice and scanned the field, the tree line, the snow-encased road. And I stood watching him, worrying about his future. The yard was empty. I chuckled. See that? All our bickering, and he had enough time to reach the highway. Someone must have picked him up by now. He'll be fine. I nudged my son's side with an elbow. Dale feared worse. He drew up his mittens then, looking particularly cynical, and asked, "But what if he fell? You wouldn't see him from here. If he fell, he won't make it. He won't, and you know it. No one could survive a night out here." Dale spun his hands in the air around him. "Plus, he looked sick." Okay, true. The storm was building fast. What I saw forming over our heads that afternoon was more like an angry sea than any winter sky I'd known. Above, a thick roiling monstrosity swelled, tossing snowflakes at us like threats. It was only a hair before noon, and already the drifts were a foot high. If the stranger fell, no, we wouldn't have seen him from here, and yes, he'd be dead by nightfall. Well then, I answered slowly, deliberately. If he did fall, that's not our problem. Dale's eyes grew sand dollar wide. His mouth fell open, and he stood on the snow-skimmed path gawking at me, as if I'd just committed some terrible crime. When he saw how serious I was, he clamped both hands over my arm, then hung them there, whining. "Come on, go see. I'll wait here. I'll shovel really good. You won't have to when you get back, I promise." Dale was always a sensitive boy. Yet another trait beside the bad eyesight that he'd inherited from his mother. And I knew, if he brought this up at supper in front of Sable, and he most certainly would, there'd be an all hours of the night bickering session. Possibly a night on the downstairs couch in it for me. My old bones couldn't take that. The living room never held heat, not even in the dead of August. My toes would need bed warmth tonight. Sure, I grumbled a few choice words under my breath before plodding across the yard. As I returned a few minutes later, Dale pretended not to be curious. By the looks of it, he had also been pretending to shovel. The walk was camouflaged with half an inch of fresh snow. "So?" he asked, handing over my shovel. "Was he there?" I wouldn't have lied to him. "No. I told you, he got a ride. I'd bet on that. Probably checking into a room in town by now." I huffed, trying to convince myself more than Dale. "Now, don't you feel better?" I tipped forward and kissed the top of his soggy hat. Dale ran ahead toward the house. As I started, I was troubled by a sudden shriek from behind. The night was dark, and that man, he was back. Only this time, he lurked in the shadows near the house, half hidden by a row of forgotten bed sheets frozen stiff on the clothesline. I noticed him as I passed from the kitchen to the pantry to fetch another flashlight and the last of the candles. At first, I stood near the stove for a good long moment, mistaking the shadowy form for a weak sapling that might have torn loose from the wind. But when I went to the window and pulled back the curtain, the outline was unmistakably human. He wasn't doing much of anything, just standing. So I rapped my knuckles lightly on the glass to get his attention. He didn't respond, so I followed the track of his upturned head, the direction of his snow-blind gaze. The stranger was staring up at the only lighted room in the house. The boy's bedroom. With my insides grown as cold as the wintry world outside, I sprinted around, bolting every door, checking, then rechecking every window latch. Upstairs, I paced the carpet in the bedroom, tugging on my beard until the skin beneath it ached. The truck was buried and useless. Our power had been out for hours. The nearest neighbor lived a quarter-mile away. It was 10 o'clock at night, freezing cold. The phone lines had been dead since breakfast. I'd sent Dale to bed early, thank God, and now I debated whether or not to get my shotgun. "Howard, he's just lost and remembered our house," Sable assured me as she settled under the quilts. Breathing heavier than a woman her age should, she twisted her bulk, reached around to slide a magazine off the nightstand. She fell back into the pillows with a breathy sigh. I walked toward the mantel, hesitated, then blew out the candles. Sable's arms fell slack at her sides. "Oh, my word, Howard, don't be such a nervous ninny. He's just lost." I hobbled across the dark bedroom toward the window. My toes burned in the heat of the room. A bath and bandages had done them little good, and I suspected I might have shed a few on the rug. "How can he be lost all damn day?" I pressed, tugging a tab of loose tape from my pinky toe and peeling back the bandage. "There's a gas station not 2 miles from here, not 2. And Swidler's farm is less than that. Hell, I'm older than he is by at least a decade, and I can make 2 miles, even in this snow." I tossed the stray bandage to the windowsill. It stuck. "And if he'd gotten a ride earlier, why is he back here?" "Are you sure he got a ride? Maybe he was hiding on you." I hadn't thought about that. Sure, there were plenty of places he could have hidden, especially so near the woods. They were slurry, even in daylight. In snow, and too many downed limbs, evergreens as wide as school buses, and oaks whose leaves hadn't fallen but should have. Then there were the boulders. Big, tilting things someone of his stature could easily crouch beneath. No, I wouldn't have seen him. And the idea of someone, this particular someone, hiding in the woods, watching my son from the thicket, there was a hint of terror in that. I was suddenly gripped with the image of this thin, raggedy form pressed flush to the snow, embossing a wraith-like pattern into it, and a skeletal face, gleaming white as wax, peeking at me from behind some lawn-toppled deadfall. The vision made my skin shrink 3 sizes. "So, you saw nothing when you went to look for him?" Sable pressed. "Nothing at all?" "Oh, actually, I did, but I didn't want to excite the boy." "What?" I shook my head, clearing the last branches of concern from my throat. "It's nothing, really, but beside footprints and a single handprint, I saw, well, there were feathers." "What are you talking about?" I repeated. "Feathers, Sable. Damnedest thing, too. Whole bunch. He must have come from the highway because there was a trail of them leading across the field in the direction of town. They were all scattered, as if someone had torn a mess of birds apart right there in the snow. But there was no blood. I never mentioned it to Dale, but I even saw one from a red-winged blackbird. When was the last time we seen those round here?" Sable scratched her head. "What other kinds?" Little fuzzy gray ones mostly. But there were bigger ones, the kind that don't fit round here. Seabirds. Maybe a gull, I'd suppose. I mean, a seagull. Out here, so far from the ocean? That doesn't make sense now, does it? I didn't think much about it at the time, just that the man might have been carrying a torn comforter or something. Maybe one of those homemade jobs like the Scott sisters sell on their farm. Well, Scott sisters use chicken feathers, Sable scoffed. They don't even wash them. Just stuff them in the way they came off, blood, lice, and all. What you saw is too nice for them cheap rags. Now, Melissa Meade, Joseph's eldest daughter, there's a woman who makes a quality blanket. Such pretty things. Sable's voice trailed thin. But she uses goose down. I glanced out the window. The stranger stood, throwing long, spindly shadows against the snow. What the hell was he doing with feathers? Sable was agitated. Why not open the window and ask him if you don't want to go down? He might need a phone, or maybe he's injured. Seriously, see what he wants. I knelt at the window, placing my hands on the sill. The wood was corpse cold. I peered over my discarded bandage into the yard, doing my best to stay hidden. Something about him had been disturbing me since this morning. Be it the concealing shadows from his hat brim or the lack of color in his face. Whatever it was, he gave me the creeps. His skin held an artificial quality, like a waxy mask. Something mimicking human, but not quite so. I thought for a moment how any man could stand to have his flesh exposed to the elements like that. And the shriek that I heard earlier, well, was that him? It was then that I stood and announced, I'm calling the sheriff. Have you lost your mind, Howard? He hasn't done a thing. The hell he hasn't. This here is private property. If I call the sheriff and he is lost or needs medical attention, they'll take care of it. I'm telling you, it ain't safe. What if it's some kind of trick to get in the house? I swear I don't care if he dies right in front of me. You ever read the paper? Sable jeered. Just open the window. I hesitated. There wasn't any good reason to do so. I read the stories. Hell, I'd lived it. When I was 6, I overheard my father and my Uncle Henry talking in the kitchen late one night. Dad was telling him about the Pear family. Pear? My bad. The Pear family. A young, well-intentioned Protestant couple from Lancaster who opened their home to a wandering handyman. And as I'd crouched against the far wall in the den, listening to my father's sturdy voice crack when he described what their bodies looked like, outlining every gruesome detail about the damage one crazy man with a ball-peen hammer, or what one crazy man could do with a ball-peen hammer, I learned life was full of checks and balances. Ever since, I'd kept mine in check. The fact was, on any given day, madmen scoured the country lanes and backwoods towns just like this one, in search of hospitable targets. Sable was nearing 50 years old, in no shape to fend off an attacker, and, quite honestly, neither was I. Then there was Dale. The boy weighed 70 pounds wet and was useless with a firearm, despite all the shooting we'd done together. Couldn't even hit a beer can from 10 feet. The floor outside the bedroom creaked. Our door inched open. Dale wobbled in, an unlit candle in one hand, his other rubbing at his nose. I had a bad dream, he sniffled. His cheeks were flushed, as if he'd been slapped awake. That man today, the man walking in the hat, he was at my window, and his face popped. It was all blue. I wanted to come in and sit by the fire. He told me he had a secret, a big one, that the biggest secret in the whole wide world. Anyway, I was gonna, but the window, it stuck. Sable tossed the covers aside and rushed to Dale. She knelt, pulled his sleep-starred face into her bosom, and with the most worried eyes I ever seen, asked me if this could be true. Impotently, I shook my head. Like ours, Dale's bedroom was on the 2nd floor. A sudden movement outside caught me off guard. I hunched as the stranger emerged from behind the clothesline. In some pitiful attempt to preserve my sanity, I might have laughed. Here I was, captive in my own home, cut off from the world by snow, and one man who did absolutely nothing but stand beneath our clothesline in the dark. But I was cut off. If Dale said he was at his window, then God help us. We didn't raise no liar. I leaned into the chilled glass. The stranger was a shivering stick, the lower parts of his face tinged gray and chopped raw around the edges. Then he smiled. It was a dreadful sight, causing a shiver to run through every part of me, as if the wings of some dark spirit had brushed against my soul. He smiled once more, and in some cordial pantomime, he dipped forward, frosted fingers tipping his hat to my silhouette. The wind whipped his hair into a freakish configuration that resembled piled snow. He should have been dead. He certainly looked it already. but I saw him well enough for my heart to spasm and my knees to go soft. There he was, grinning, as if it all meant something. Or maybe it was never a smile. I cupped my hands around my eyes for a better look, pressed my face to the glass, and squinted. No, there was no smile on that bloodless face, although at this point I might have preferred it. His lips were gone, eaten away, chewed off by winter's icy mouth. The upper and lower teeth were fully exposed, twisting things like a root system dredged from the bottom of some long-forgotten pond. Dale squirmed out of Sable's arms. He shuffled up behind me. "You gotta let him in, Paul. He needs to be inside. He told me so. He's far from his home, and he has a secret. Said he's gotta keep them warm." "Them?" I blinked hard. "Them who? Who's them, Dale?" I reached out and clamped down on one of my son's shoulders a bit rougher than I should have. "Do you mean he's not alone?" Dale hung from the hemline of my pajama top, forcing me to stiffen my legs to hold both of us steady. I shot Sable a look. She padded up behind me. Grabbing Dale, she steered him toward our bed. Dale wept as she lifted him onto it. He rubbed his eyes, sobbing uncontrollably, insisting our behavior was unchristian. Dale cried, "We must help that man." "Lay down, honey," Sable whispered. "It ain't safe. Pa's right. He's got to be our protector. We can't let strangers in no matter what. We gotta watch out for ourselves especially. We gotta watch out for ourselves, especially," her voice cracked, "if he's brought others. God understands. God will forgive us." She pulled the covers up over Dale, then smoothed them until his legs were cocooned. "No, Ma, God won't, and neither will he," Dale insisted. Sable's head dropped into her hands. She was upset with the situation, understandably, but if she knew how close to death the man was, she might have gotten hysterical and done something stupid. I couldn't allow that. If this was a regular man out in such a storm. The day had been cruel, but night would kill him. He should be dead already. The thought skipped through my mind only once, and that was enough. I peered down at the stranger, wondering. Suffused in winter's moonlight, consumed by the wind, petrified, his cheeks a grotesque pork chop white, two bloodless slabs I briefly imagined touching. The brim of his hat, dipping, lifting, dipping, teasing me with horrific little glimpses of of what? The bottom of his duster weaved around his legs, and when the wind strengthened enough to pitch him sideways, I grimaced. It threw the intruder down to his knees. Frozen hands clutched in desperation as a muscled wind ripped his coat open. He clambered for the flaps, his body twisting around and around. That otherwise lifeless face was suddenly fraught with panic, and his hands were left scissoring to latch each part of his coat back together. But it was too late. The duster had blown open, and what showed beneath sent such a quake rumbling through my body that my knees buckled. "What's he doing?" Sable asked. "He's just—" The man was trying to stand, keep his coat closed, and turn his back to whatever direction the wind blew all at once. A spiteful gust tore the hat from him. His fingers did a brief but useless dance after it as it spun off in the direction of the barn. "For God's sake, Howard, at least throw some blankets out. Do you know how cold it is out there? Last time I checked, it was 3 below. Jesus, he'll die." "Then he dies. I am not going to endanger my family by letting a stranger into this damn house." The sound of covers tossed aside, and the soft thumping of Dale's stocking feet closed in behind me. Sable was there now, too, peeking over my shoulder, trying to steal a look. I steadied myself, pushed her away first, and when she came back grumbling, I did it again. Dale tried to weave through my legs for a look outside. Sable yanked at the waistband of my pajamas. "Let me see," Dale was crying. "Let him inside, Pa." "I won't," I said. I clamped my legs together to hold Dale back. I prodded my wife away with a firm hand, instructing her to go and check the phone to see if it was still dead. I was blocking their view as best I could, because I was blocking his view. The ghoul in the yard. I could not deny what my eyes saw. It was impossible. Impossible. Underneath the stranger's coat was a body. Not a man's body, no, but a complex nest of summer birds formed into the shape of a body. A crawling, shifting, agitated mass of feathery horrors topped by the skeletal head of a dead man. Like some gruesome puzzle they had assembled in his chest, this mass of oily black necks all tucked into one another, intertwined until the flock formed one solid, horrifying mosaic. The stranger must have sensed my panic, for his eyes widened. I watched him wrap impossibly slender arms around the feathered things, trying to protect them from the howling winter wind. I flagged a hand at my wife and shouted, "Is the phone dead?" She slammed the receiver down. "Yes, is he?" "Go get my gun," she stammered. "What for?" "I said, get my gun." Just as Sable ran from the bedroom, the horror in the snow relented, spreading its arms out wide. Relief swallowed its face. That jagged leer flatlined. The thing raised its ice-encrusted head toward the window, then slowly, accusingly, pointed one very crooked finger toward me. I clutched Dale and turned his face into my arms when the brood of the stranger's chest fluttered. Wings slowly lifted. Collective heads unfurled, creaking slowly in our direction. Monstrous, unblinking eyes settled upon us. And through a flurry of splintering glass, wind, and roaring cold, the birds let themselves in. Oak, Montana, November 2004. The afternoon was cool, inky, and dark. There was rain. Not much. Just enough to pox what snowy skin remained on the ground from an earlier storm. A breeze blew from the south, dragging blankets of steel-gray clouds behind it. The farm was not what it was. Our barn had long since succumbed to mold and crumbled away. In places, the yard gate had rusted so thoroughly that it sifted into a fine red powder at the slightest touch. My wife and I sat, me on the porch swing, her in a rocker I'd built a few years back. I thought I did a hell of a job with it. Painted it her favorite shade of blue. Periwinkle, I think. I knew she liked it, though she never said so. I gazed at the field, settling on a lone figure which stood among the dying clumps of sugar beet. It was a scarecrow-stiff thing, with arms thrust away from its frame and a hollow face dappled in shadows. I turned my attention to the sky. "It's going to be an early winter," I said, with a voice too loud for the occasion. "Getting close. I can feel it." I turned to Sable. The weary look she wore caused me to drop my tone. "I'm afraid for him, Ma. There will be too many this year." Sable did not answer. She stood, quietly gathering rolls of yarn and dropping them into her basket. So good of her to have stayed with me all this time. "And what do you think?" I called to the figure in the field. Dale's head swiveled, awkwardly, painfully, as if some ancient part of him was still tracking the sound of his father's voice. I left my rocker, eased myself down the porch steps on knees too old to carry me and toes that had abandoned me years before. I grasped the railing, my gaze prying the horizon. The sun was washed out, bleak as a corpse eye, and shrinking behind some far-off mountains I'd never known. Gritting my teeth, I made my way down the steps. I crossed the field, and when I reached my son, I knelt, doing my best to unbutton his duster. "I'm so sorry," I said, whispering between the tears. "Daddy wanted it to be him. You know that, don't you, Dale?" "Daddy's always regretted." I bent to my son, sobbing. I prayed to God it would be me. Nearly a ghost, he turned away, greeting the wind. Don't know how long it'll take now. Might be days. There's so many of them. So many. My fingers fumbled to undo the last button. "You ever thought there could be this many?" The question was stupid and remained unanswered. Still, I talked just to hear a voice, any voice, even if it was just my own. "I don't know if you have any strength left to do it, Dale. Do you?" I glanced over my shoulder toward the porch. Sable busied herself, bundling her sweater closed. I turned back to the dimming sky. The migration was beginning. Clouds transformed into oily masses, obnoxious swells of gloom, 3 to my left, more than I could stand to my right. I heard them, too. The anxious beating of wings drawing nearer, their songs thick with anticipation. As the monstrous brood swallowed the sky, I wondered if my poor son could hear anything of them at all. With trembling hands, I spread apart Dale's coat. I had raised a fine young man, strong as an ox, sturdy stock. He will make it. He can carry them. I've force-fed him all summer. The birds are on time, not 3.5 weeks late like they were in the fall of '89. Come and nest, you selfish bastards. Warm those pointless, hollow bones. Dale's coat flaps in the breeze like a sad old flag. My eyes prickle at the sight of his chest. It's a cavity now, concave, a shrunken pit-picked skeletal. Whatever flesh remains on the breeze, whips on the breeze like ticker tape. The food I'd forced into him rots in the bowels of his abdomen. Some greenish, unidentifiable blob has liquefied, rolling out of his gut and down his groin like jelly. His heart is shriveled to a walnut. Sickened, I turn my attention back to the horizon. There are too many to keep, I worry, and not enough food. My foolish eyes widen at that thought. But maybe this time will be the last. How much longer could this go on? How much of my son is left? I find myself counting his ribs, praying death catches him first. Sable moves toward the door. In one glimpse, I see the decades of heartache that had bent her spine and emptied her soul. She hasn't spoken in all these years. Not one word since I'd let the stranger freeze in our yard so long ago. It was the biggest mistake of my life, if only I had known. If I'd not been so suspicious and let the poor soul in, allowed him to sit a while and warm all of what he carried, perhaps my son's fate would have been different. He's got a secret, Pa. The biggest secret in the whole wide world. Bet he does, son. I bet he does. I called a Sable that I love her, but she's disappeared. A frailty slipping from my vision like a phantom. Year after year they return. All kinds. Little brown ones and fat white ones. The ones who laugh and the ones who call. Blue striped ones and small skittish yellow ones. Some with full orange bellies and some barely fed. And the largest, well, they're always the worst. This is only the beginning. I know from experience, it's just the start of their hellish journey. Soon, there will be many. So very many. I'm hoping they will change course. Dale thrusts his breastbone forward, a gesture that he's ready to accept them. I do the same. I'm ready now too, son. Pitiful. Daddy is so sorry. My lips quiver and twist. Can he feel them inside? For a good long moment, my eyes do a spastic dance between what's left of my boy and the shrieking horde. This will be a long winter, forecasted to be colder than the last, storm upon storm. Dale will need to do his best to survive for their sake. I hope the blankets and bread I piled at his feet will help. I reach out to touch him, but my fingers miss and swipe only air. I close my eyes briefly, thinking, God spare the man who does not open his home to you, Dale. But, as the great and smoldering mob descends, my prayers change course. I pray that my son will not have the strength to carry every one of them. Release my son of this terrible curse. My hope is death. God is not listening. And the birds, they're not interested in an old fool like me. My son's fate was sealed long ago when I refused shelter to a traveler in a wide-brimmed hat. I know that now. I made a mistake. An adult's mistake. But Dale, poor child, he knew better. Where do all the birds go, Pa? I'd answered with what I knew then, not what I know now. Birds do not go south in winter. Daddy is so very sorry, but every last one of them must be kept warm and fed until spring. At the earliest. My God. The earliest get the worms. Okay, JM, that was creepy as all shit. Holy damn. I was really visualizing for the entire thing here. Like, I was getting some very strong, like old TNT. Okay, I'm putting myself out there. But, like, if you think back to old, like, cable, like TNT, old school USA, they're, like, short form made for TV movies, stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm picturing. There's something that I don't quite know how to describe that I really like about how this read, that just, for some reason, it feels distinctively 90s. Like, what was it? I can't remember the name of the book. I just remember I got it at the book fair. It was like a black cover with like a lizard man on it. I think it was like Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark or something like that. And that was tailored towards young adult reading. This definitely is not young adult reading. But there's a certain sort of quality to it. And it's not because it's those are scary stories and this is a scary story. There's a feel to it that my brain just translates it to the 90s. Like, there is so much evocative 90s feel to it. I'm thinking, again, old school cable TV, the 90s book fair, not Goosebumps, but like the scary story ones. I don't know. I don't really know how to like pinpoint it more than that. If anyone else, listening to this, if you got that same sort of vibe, can you toss it down in the comments? Like, am I crazy? Am I not crazy? Throw it on out there. But that being aside, like not even aside, that is cool. And this was really great to read. I enjoyed the hell out of that. In that, like, I'm wary about birds now, dude. Like, that's, oh God, that is so, well done. Okay. So that was Nightmare Tuesdays for the week of... Wait, this is being recorded for next Tuesday. I'm recording this on Thursday. For the week of October 28th. That is what this is for the week of. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, as before, I'm going to have links to this book specifically, where you can go purchase a copy of it, as well as a link to Nightmare Press's webpage. If you did enjoy, please go buy a copy. Go check out the other stuff. Check out the Nightmare Tuesday playlist, where I've got several others and hopefully several more to come. See if there's something that catches your eye by way of your ear. I probably could have workshopped that. Whatever. Anyway, as ever, I sincerely hope that you enjoyed yourselves, and I will catch you all next time. Deuces.